It is such a pleasure for me to be here with Dan Schulman, who runs one of my favorite companies. Who uses PayPal in this room? A lot of people. But I am so passionate. I come from a decade in the anti-trafficking space, and now starting my own company, I have gotten so impassioned by this vision of how corporations can be a force for good in the world, and that is exemplified by Dan and the way that he runs PayPal. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So what does it mean to you? Rachel called you a CEO activist. What is that? How do you internalize that? Like, where do you even begin to use your platform for good?
Did you go to Princeton High School? Yes? Yeah. I know a lot of people label me as a CEO activist, and I think that's because I take a lot of very public stands. But I just think of myself as sort of a responsible citizen. I think we can't avoid the cultural wars that are going on. We don't live in like a little bubble over here. We are all a part of the world that we live in. And I think great companies have a moral obligation to be a force for good. There's no way that we can count or solely count on governments to resolve the ills that we see in our society. In many ways, they're gridlocked. Sometimes they're good leaders, and sometimes there aren't good leaders. And so I think corporations and companies, and all of you that invest in companies and run companies, we can make a huge difference, and we're not conflicted about it either. I don't think there's any false duality between being a force for good and having great returns for shareholders. I think those things actually go hand in hand, and so I think it's my obligation to stand up for certain values and to make sure that our company lives up to it.
Yeah. And you have done so much of that. Let's talk internally for a second. So when you first came into PayPal and you looked across the wages and saw what people were getting paid, what did you think and what did you do about it?
So, the first thing I did when I was at PayPal was try and figure out what our mission was going to be as a company. And that mission is, how do we democratize financial services? There are 1.7 billion people in the world that live outside the financial system. They struggle every single day to make ends meet. And here in the US, in a developed country, there's 70 million adults that are outside the financial system. They spend on average $140 billion on unnecessary interest rates, on high fees, which is as much as they spend on food. Wow. And so it's ridiculous that that should be the case when we have technology that can make those transactions maybe at 80% less cost than the shadow banking industry. And so that's a pretty expansive vision, inclusive of all citizens, and managing and moving money should be a right for all citizens, not a privilege for the affluent. And so if you have that as your mission, one of your core values has to be around diversity and inclusion. And so I looked, when I came into PayPal, at how diverse were we? You know, starting at the board level, when I first came in, we had one woman on the board, and the rest were white males. We are now 45% diverse on our board. It's just, it's like a no-brainer. It's the right thing to do.
But it should be a new standard,
yeah,
right?
It should be a standard. And we are now approaching 40% of our vice president and above are women or diverse individuals. And so I looked at pay, and when I asked, are we, paying equally, not just across gender, but across ethnicity as well, the lawyers said, well, it depends on how you look at it. And I said,
what is that?
Really? Don't give me that excuse. I know. So thank you. And so, wow. Will you come up here and just be with me forever in life?
Love you, Rachel.
It'd be so great.
Our
It
front row
really,
cheerleader.
really would be. So anyway, we did a very comprehensive, we used outside consultants to come in and look at our pay schedules, and we found that we weren't paying equal wages for men or women across ethnicity. And people said, well, we can fix that in maybe 3 or 4 years. And I said, well, why wouldn't we fix it right now? And so we fixed it right away. We're 100%.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and again, to me, that's just it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to be a great company, you have to have the power of diversity. Diverse companies perform better than those that don't have diversity of thinking and diversity of thought.
And you guys have grown a lot since you came on as CEO 4 years ago.
Yeah, we have.
Can you brag for a second?
No.
Okay. No. Well, they've grown a lot. They're a lot bigger. Dan has done very, very well. Talk to me about the way that you've addressed social issues that are more endemic in the financial system, like trafficking of drugs and arms and people. Being a financial provider, how have you guys, what's been your role in that? How do you feel a responsibility there? How do you address that?
Yeah. So we're a major consumer brand across the world. We have almost 250 million people who use our platform. And we need to take stands where values are being threatened. So I'll just give maybe 3 quick examples.
Yeah, please.
One, all of them uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So the first was, and probably some people have heard of this, was we announced that we were going to open a major operations center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we were up there with the governor, holding our hands up in a victory sort of thing, bringing jobs to Charlotte. And a week later, the same governor announced HB 2, which was a bill that allowed for the potential discrimination against someone for their sexual identity or sexual orientation. And he came on TV, and a lot of people denounced this. We signed a petition against it right away. But the governor came on TV and said, a lot of people are talking about this, but nobody's really taking any action. We're going to be fine. And so I walked down the hallway to our head of CorpCom and said, in 2 days, we're pulling out of North Carolina, and I want to announce it.
Wow.
And so we pulled out, and it was shocking to me to see how partisan really the country was. I immediately was targeted with numerous death threats. I actually had to have security go into a bathroom before me to check out that there weren't anybody there waiting to jump on me. Now I do martial arts. So
I was going to
really
say,
ready
you do
for this.
MMA, right?
Yeah, I
okay,
do.
So let the haters know.
I was looking
Just watch
forward
out,
to it,
right?
Yeah. But I told my mom about these death threats, and this is the thing that I'm going to advise everybody: never tell your mom that you've gotten a death threat. She was like, "Oh my, it's so scary." And she asked me if I would do it again. Of course, we would do it 100 times out of 100 times. And it was a rallying cry for the employees inside PayPal. Then the immigration bill came out, and I was invited to the White House to have dinner with the president. And that day, I went on CNN to denounce the immigration bill for being unconstitutional, which was very uncomfortable.
The day that you were having
yeah.
lunch with the president.
Dinner, yeah. And then when Charlottesville happened, there were a number of groups that use PayPal to raise funds. I mean, we're used by over 20 million organizations around the world. And we really need to think about, and we have an acceptable use policy that says we do not allow anybody to promote hatred or violence and be able to use PayPal or Venmo. Now, the real hard thing about it, Allison, is that the difference between hate and free speech is a very tricky thing. And nobody is taught in school what that difference is. There are a lot of debates, and yet we need to make decisions on whether something is hateful or free speech. And to me, like Nazis and KKK, like shouldn't really be a debate, I wouldn't think.
No.
Right? To me, those are hate and promote violence. But when we took down a lot of those sites, again, the amount of hate mail coming in was astonishing. And so we have a responsibility, and I tell my team all the time, we cannot avoid the cultural wars. We have to make stands. We shouldn't make stands based on politics, but on values. And so I thought North Carolina wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought North Carolina wasn't a red issue or a blue issue. I thought it was a red, white, and blue issue.
Yeah.
I thought, like, we should not tolerate discrimination of any kind in our country whatsoever, period. And to me, that's just like a value of our country, and I think a value of what we as citizens should uphold.
Wow. And do you feel like that rally, what was it like internally at PayPal through those times? Do you feel like the company
There's
rallied
the
behind
bell.
you? Well, it's like a game show. You win something, and there will be a prize outside the door. But did the company rally behind you? Did the board of directors support you? Did you feel like you had that tailwind making these decisions?
I forgot to ask my board of directors when I did it, but they did rally behind me afterwards, which was good. And I would say, look, we have 25,000 people that work at PayPal. And what I always say to them is, look, you have 25,000 people, and the reason we're such a good company is because all of you have your own thoughts and opinions and your own beliefs, and I don't ask you to have the same beliefs as I do whatsoever. However, we at PayPal stand for certain things, and if you work here, you have to support those. And so when we did the immigration bill, which I really thought was an anti-religion bill against Muslims, and I thought, like, there's just like, that's what I thought it was veiled. And so it affected 8 people in PayPal. And an employee raised their hand and said, why did you take such a public stand when it only affected 8 people? And I said to them, look, it's a very slippery slope in general if you ignore 8 and then the next 20 are targeted, et cetera. And I said, and if you were one of those 8, you definitely wouldn't be saying that. And so I think people at PayPal are proud to be a part of a company that is trying to make a difference in the world, that has a set of values that just don't hang on the wall, but we act on them. We believe in them. We try to espouse them everywhere. And so I think they're excited about it.
Well, thank you for, round of applause. Thank you for living those values, Dan, and just for reminding us what it means to actually be an activist in whatever situation we're in and to live out those values. I am so more proud than ever to use your products, and just thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. Appreciate it.